Let's talk about how Jim Harbaugh handled the NCAA stuff. Obviously, that came out. Heading into Big Ten Media Day, I think pretty clear which side leaked that, wanted to put the pressure on him, make him answer questions about it, which he really can't, right? And I think that's kind of the point, too.
And
He's
made
not
clear.
allowed to. He said at one point he's not at liberty to. He's unable. I'm unable to. He was basically saying it in every which way, and reporters are trying to frame the question in many different ways. He obviously, I think some of them were, cover other teams or nationally and probably don't realize that he is just going to keep saying the same thing over and over if you keep asking him. But he said he would have loved to talk about it. He'd love to lay it all out there. He cannot right now. He said nothing to be ashamed of. Pretty much status quo on how he handled it, right?
Yeah, and basically what he said at the podium, he said, "I would love to talk about it, frankly," and I think he will talk about it at some point. And I think what he will say is what he said at the beginning of spring ball when he said, "You know what? If you compare us to perfect, we're not perfect. If you compare us to every other program in the country, we're probably as good or better than anybody else." And I think he's right. So, which is why, and we'll get to this as well, these donors need to start ponying up for this NIL and really help him get the collectives where they need to be able to compete, because he's doing it the right way. They're not doing pay for play. They want to do things right, and he needs more support. So some of those donors need to step up. But he's absolutely right when he says, that he has nothing to be ashamed of. This is about a hamburger, as we reported initially several months ago, and committed recruits that came to town, on a whim. You know what? And I guess COVID had put a stop to some of the in-person recruiting, but these are committed recruits that just decided to come in and surprise them, and instead of sending them back on their way hungry, sees them and maybe buys them a burger, or allegedly buys them a burger. So, and then says he doesn't remember. He didn't even lie about it. He said he didn't remember. So, a common strategy, a defense strategy, I guess you would say. So, but you know what? He said I think about 7 or 8 people tried to bait him into saying something. And he said, "I can't, you don't understand. I can't," during the investigation. Didn't stop him from trying.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny to watch a lot of these reporters, especially some of them. And I'm not outing anyone. I'm just talking about the collective in general.
Name names.
They're not capable of playing the mental gymnastics that would coerce a response out of Jim Harbaugh. So it is funny to see a lot of people keep trying. And that's where it makes, the NCAA, because let's call it what it is. Like, they're the ones who leaked this to ESPN earlier this week. And it's just such weasel behavior. And it goes back to, this being essentially, Jim Harbaugh is essentially being tried in a kangaroo court right now. That's my take on the whole situation. I mean, yeah, I get it. Technically, the NCAA is the governing body of intercollegiate athletics. And, you can't exactly tell them to pound sand, but all these other schools do it and get a slap on the wrist. But because Jim Harbaugh digs his heels in, they're trying to, I don't even say make an example out of him. Just they're mall cops. That's what they are. So the fact that they come out and they're, that report comes out, and then you've got these reporters trying to play, the tennis match with Jim Harbaugh and aren't getting served anything back because it's a legal matter. There are lawyers involved with the NCAA. There are lawyers involved with Michigan. There's lawyers involved, representing the interests of Jim Harbaugh. It's just such weasel behavior that goes back to why this is also frivolous in the first place. So I thought he handled it about as well as he could have. Like I said, he couldn't say anything, but even when Jim Harbaugh can't say anything, he finds a way to kind of weave in some of his personal feelings on it, saying we have nothing to be ashamed of. And trust me, I would love to disclose what happened. I think he kind of said it without saying it, that he thinks this is silly and a waste of time as well. But we'll see what happens with it.
And so does just about everybody else, right, Clay, with the exception of maybe a couple rival fan bases.
That's literally what I was about to say is, like, it's perfect because nobody likes the NCAA at this point. Nobody trusts the NCAA. I mean, we saw what happened with Tennessee, 200 violations. They could go to a bowl this year. They lost a couple scholarships and a couple recruiting hours or whatever it was. And at this point, really nobody takes them seriously. So kind of saying that, as AB, you said it, saying it without saying it, like, I'd love to lay it all out there. since 1982, I've been coming here, win or lose, talking about a game or talking about any situation that's gone on. He really has. I mean, contract stuff and everything. He's been asked about everything. This is just that one time that he can't. But he kind of alluded to maybe what his feelings would be on it. I would love to hear, what his true feelings are, completely, maybe what he was talking about on the plane ride home and stuff like that. But obviously we're not privy to that. But yeah, I thought that was pretty good. And then the other angle of this too is if he is suspended 4 games or however long, every Michigan player was asked about that too. They all said, hey, I don't know much about the situation. Obviously, they probably a little coached on that, and as they should have been. But, I mean, they all talked about he's going to be there in spirit. He's prepared us, for having to go through this situation. We're well prepared. This is a veteran team. And they said it could galvanize them. Blake Corum said he's going to rally his troops, that they'll play for him. And, that's kind of, one of the first thoughts I had coming out of this. You saw a couple guys on Twitter, allude to some stuff, and when the news broke on Tuesday, and that's pretty much how they're taking it. I think is that this could be extra motivation for them. Not that it's an ideal situation, but there's always some good that could come from some sort of situation. You could get a team that's extra motivated, and a Jim Harbaugh that when he comes back is ready to show the NCAA and win a national championship.
And let's be honest, this is the good side of having a schedule that is not exactly the murderer's row of a non-conference schedule, plus Rutgers to start the Big Ten season at home. However, Rutgers has played them pretty tough for about 3 of the last 4 halves. So at the same time, if you're going to start, if you were starting, for example, with Penn State at home or something like that, then maybe you'd be a little bit more nervous, but you're not. So it would be very interesting to see, as Clay wrote in his column today, if it does remain a 4-game suspension, and I'm still thinking it can get reduced from what the people that we've spoken with, maybe cut in half. Who are those guys that are going to be leading the team? Who are the coaches? We were talking about this on the car ride home yesterday from Indianapolis, and is he going to do it on a rotating basis? One guy gets an opportunity, and then another guy gets another opportunity.
It wouldn't shock with him.
It wouldn't shock. Hey, I got 4 great coaching candidates. Remember, he said to be head coaches. Maybe I'll give them all a shot.
Them. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But I don't think that would be the case. I think Sharon Moore is the guy after he serves apparently his 1-game suspension. So, which is crazy to me. Yep. And then, Grant Newsom wouldn't be one of those guys anyway, but apparently he's going to get a 1-game suspension. So, hey, it is what it is, and it's not ideal, but in this situation, when you've got the non-conference schedule that you've got, it's really not that big a deal. And everybody's like, oh my God, people don't understand the cohesion. I'm like, no, it's not a big deal, because he's going to be coaching the team throughout the week. He's going to be involved in all the preparation and everything else. And you could call it the worst game of your life as a head coach and still probably win those first 3 games on the schedule, maybe 4.
Yeah, the funny thing too is that, he can technically be with the team Monday through Friday. But I would be very surprised if he's suspended for 4 games. If he talks to us those first 4 weeks, I'm assuming that he would trot whoever is the designated head coach for the week out there. I mean, it's weird. It is so. The fact that he could miss feasibly a quarter to a third of the season and really not have the team be affected much at all is, that this is where the schedule and the way it breaks down comes into play. And again, talk about, reporters trying to coerce some kind of answer out of Jim Harbaugh. This is the 2nd year in a row someone's tried to ask him about, how he set up the schedule. And he said, I haven't set up a schedule since maybe his 1st or 2nd year at Stanford. I mean, that's an athletic department thing. So obviously you can't plan for things like this, but the fact that it comes together the way that it did, maybe Michigan only wins these games by 35 points instead of 42, those first couple weeks of the year. But it also speaks to, he often talks about how he has all these future head coaches on staff. Those guys will be fine. I think the support staff is as strong as it has ever been around him. I think the player leadership is as good as it has ever been. And, we've been talking about for a while, in the lead up to Big Ten Media Days, something we wanted to know from these guys is, how are you? And this is before we knew of the Jim Harbaugh suspension stuff. We wanted to know how a team that has done what they've done the last 2 years, how do you get back up and do it again? And how do you find a way to add that edge? And, they discussed a lot of ways, these players that we talked to, that they've tried to improve on the margins and just add something to the repertoire to give them that extra edge. And, now the fact that their coach is kind of under fire for something that, again, is just so frivolous and so silly is, I think that could be, kind of the kindling for the fire that gets lit in October and hopefully into November, December.
Yeah, as people pointed out on Twitter, the last time a former Michigan quarterback was suspended 4 games, he won the Super Bowl. Could Jim Harbaugh go out and there are some parallels to Deflategate too in this situation, but could he go out and have an incredible season and that kind of be the start of the championship DVD, so to speak? I don't know if they still have DVDs these days.